Yo, what is up, everybody? I am Legend, and in today's final episode of my collaboration with LANDR, I'm going to be showing you guys how to mix and master a song in whatever DAW you're using, plus LANDR's mastering service. Now, as I normally do, this is not going to be the deepest of tutorials, not the most technical, but I will show you my methods and what I use and how to get your song to fit right, especially when you're using samples from different sources. So without further ado, let's get into the video. Okay, so I'm here in my DAW machine. This is what I made the beat in, and I wanted to use this song right here. This song is called Wonder. This song is off of my project Ouroboros Epilogue, and the reason why I wanted to use this beat in particular was because it does have a LANDR sample that I used in it. It's actually the very first LANDR sample that I ever downloaded when you are making an instrumental. So first thing you want to do is you want to make the beat. Obviously, you put down your drums, you put down your pianos, you put down all your instrumentation, everything that you're going to put down in the beat, you put it down. Now you can either mix the beat as you go, or you can mix the beat once you're finished. There's no right or wrong way to do this. I tend to flip-flop between both, but I'm going to show you an example of this beat right here. So we have our basic sample. This is the sample I got from LANDR. And then the drums come in. So when the drums come in, you'll hear them. Got my little layers here and everything. And I should say this before I even continue this video. There's a difference between mixing and mastering. And both of these things are important, though. You want to do both of them. So mixing is what you do before you master a song. And mixing is you're trying to get all of the instrumentation to sit together in a cohesive way. You're trying to glue them all into this one cohesive sound, whether that's the drums, a bass drum to be, you know, super punchy, or you're trying to get your snares to pop or crack. You're trying to get your strings to sit within the background but still be able to be heard but not overpower the rest of the beat. So there's a kind of like a balance and a ballet that you're going through in trying to get all these instruments to be heard but not be the star of the show. There's some instruments that you want to be out in the forefront. There's some that you want to sit in the background, but they still need to be heard regardless. Otherwise, why did you put it there in the first place? In this case, I have this really piercing kind of synth loop that is the star of this song. That's what the entire song is built around. As you can hear, this is going to be the thing that drives the entire song for its entirety. So in this case, I was trying to get the drums to be a really punchy, like Timbaland kind of style, you know what I mean? So I needed a really dope bass drum, and I found that here in this drum here. Actually, there's 3 different drums. I only used 2. If I turned this down, turn these down, you'll hear like it doesn't sound as good. I'll show you what it sounds like if this is not mixed really well. Like, where's the punch at? Where's the kick at, you know? So you want to make sure that you have your kicks turned up to a reasonable level so that they still get that punch, they still get that heavy bass feel to it. Now, there are some other things that you can do to your instruments to get it to sound more punchy without turning up the volume. And this is something a little bit more advanced, but you would want to come here and let's say use a plugin. Like, for simplicity's sake, I'll just take this CLA vocals. Now, it's a plugin designed for vocals, but it does the same thing. So you got a little bit of EQ here with bass, treble, compression. You got some other things here. I'm going to turn off the reverb and the delay and the pitch. And then we'll just like mess around with the bass here. So if you want it to really sound like, so if we come in here, we turn this off. Now turn it on. You hear how, ooh, you hear how low versus off. On. So it's all about getting the EQ right, and this is part of the process, EQing all of your stuff. You don't want, for instance, this bass to be super trebly. because then it just kind of, it's kind of got like an open end to it, if that makes sense. It doesn't sound as like, it's got that characteristic to it, but you can tell it's kind of more open, more bright sounding. And for me, I don't like my kick drums to sound bright. I like for them to be nice and low and a very white bass, you know what I'm talking about? But we have this bass, we turn it up, we have it on the sub bass, we can do lower, we can do upper, and this is just with this particular plugin. There's different kinds of plugins you can use. Torque is a really good one as well that Waves make, but I'm going to use this one for now. Now that one that's gonna, I want to kind of mess around with that. Maybe we'll make that a little bit brighter. Yeah. And then maybe I'll add some compression to it as well. A little bit of reverb. So this is one thing that I like to do with a lot of my instrumentation, a lot of my, whether it's drums or actual like strings, pianos, all that stuff, is I like to use reverbs and delays as a bit of a glue to hold everything together. You think about that white pasty glue that you put down, and it's kind of flowy and it makes everything stick, you know. This is what I see a reverb and a delay as, because it's kind of stretching out the sound of all these different instruments so that they're not just so cut off where it's just boom and that's it and it's super dry and everything. I like to use reverbs to kind of get everything to kind of sound like it's on the same playing field, because some of these instruments are not going to sound like they were made from the same person, or because you're getting them from different places. Same thing with loops. It might have different qualities of sound. It might have different characteristics in how the loops sound. So you want to use some kind of tool that's going to give each of these things the same type of characteristics, but not make them sound exactly the same, because obviously you want them to sound different. But this is what I do in my case. So let's just hear how this sounds. See, that was a big difference. So let's see without the CLA vocals, without the added bass on the kick, and without the reverb on the snare. Let's see how it sounds. It sounds good, but... And then let's add it with those two elements. Yeah. Now I do have to turn this kick down a little bit because it is punching a little too hard since I've added that bass. And then we'll have our loop in there as well. So another thing that I want to talk about is layering. When you have these different layers, because for instance, I have 3 different snares or claps. I love to layer my drum sounds, and I talk about this all the time, especially when you're using loops. You want to make sure that these are mixed properly as well, whether that's using the EQ or doing the levels, because you don't want it to just... When I first got started making my music, I used to turn everything up just full blast, 100%. And if you listen to some of my old music when I was like, you know, back in 2005 or something like that, everything just sounds so blown out, because I thought that just turning everything up was going to solve my issues. But it's all about having a dynamic range. And what that means is you're able to hear the highest highs and hear the lowest lows and everything in between without these different things drowning each other out. One doesn't overpower one to the point of making it irrelevant or making it not being able to be heard, not audible. You want that dynamic range when you're mixing, when you're making a song, because that's what keeps the song sounding full and interesting to the listener. If you have something that sounds really dry, everything's just turned up full blast, not only is it going to get tiring to somebody's ears when they're listening to your song, it's going to be boring. When you hear a song, let's say a Timbaland song, and he throws in a really crazy dope bass in there, automatically you're like, ooh, that bass, man. Why is that? Because the bass is sitting in its own place. It's got its own strength down below, that sub, that deep, just feel that punches through your chest. Whereas there's going to be a synth in the same song that's very high pitched, very piercing, very trebly, very bright. You want to have these different sounds, these different EQs and different levels to the instrumentation, because that's how you are able to tell your story in your song, to introduce a bass, to introduce a synth, to get people to be like, oh, that's in here too. So my layers here, let's play these real quick. So with this particular song, I wanted the snappiness, the crackly kind of sound, because I'm a big fan of having like really bright snares and really deep kicks. I love to layer my snares with a clap. This is like a really tubey sounding, you can hear. I have my regular clap for like the super bright part, and then a basic 808. I layered those all together to kind of get a sound of all the whole spectrum, kind of, in a way. And you'll notice all these levels aren't the same. So my clap is turned down the second least. This snare right here, I actually have to turn down the most because of that harsh tube sound. That's how I explain it, by the way, because I think of it coming through a tube. Again, I'm not the most technical person in the world. This is how I explain things. So that's why I have that turned down the most, because I want that sound to be in there, but I don't want it to be the star of the show. I don't want it to be the main characteristic of this snare that I've essentially created by layering these different snares. And then let my 808 snare be the lead that's going to carry the snares. I want that to be in the forefront. So that is actually currently turned up the most. And then my clap is going to be the second most. Versus, let's say, if I wanted to completely change up the way that this snare sounds, I could turn up the clap all the way and turn these other two down. You get a totally different sound. A totally different sound. Versus if I turn the clap down and I turn up that really tubey one all the way up and turn these two down. You see how the snare, it no longer has a pop to it, like it's just. So this is why mixing is very important when you're layering your sounds, because if you want to have certain characteristics to your beats, you have to have the certain layer that you're putting in there to be the one that sits in the forefront. And that's going to come with using compressors, using limiters, using riders, and then obviously just setting your levels right, doing your EQ in terms of like if you want it to sound bright, if you want it to sound more bassy, if you want it to have an echo to it, which my clap does have an echo to it, I believe. Other percussions that I have in here, like a rider, tambourine that's playing. So these are kind of sitting in the background as well. It's kind of like somebody, in church. These are just accents. You don't want them to be out on the forefront, so you want to have them turned down. And I would actually add a reverb to this. So just so that it's not so dry, it gives it some more character. That extra reverb is going to be kind of what ties it all together. Turn down a little bit. Because again, it's just the background instrument, it's not the star of the show. And here is where all the mixing kind of really starts to shine. This is when you want to implement a lot of the things that I was talking about, because you have a lot more instrumentation and you want to have everything to sound decent and not like it's all just trying to fight for the number one spot. Everything has to play its role. Everything has its own position, its own space, but you have to give it that space. We have the introduction of our bass, which I layered two different basses together. One is more percussive, one is just the regular old bass. We have our sample here, And then we have our drums that are doing its own thing, kind of stripped down, and our synth right here. So 2 layered synths. I want to focus on the synths because everything else I pretty much already covered. So our bass is already set up to kind of introduce. Let's do a play-in, just show you how it sounds. The introduction of the bass. And it might not sound so prevalent right now, but that is because in the mastering, that's going to be what we use to bring it out just a little bit more once we go into master. You don't want to have everything super blasted and turned up, and even the volume of the track itself. And I'll talk about that later on, but you want to have it set to where it's going to be audible when you're making your beat so that it gets translated to the master program, and then that'll bring it out even more. And then the synth is what I want to focus on. So we have these 2, if you notice here, the 2 levels on the synth. So this one is turned down quite a bit. This one's turned down a whole lot. And then we have also our reverb, our chorus effect, which I also like to use when trying to put multiple, especially synths, together. So let's listen to this by itself. Sounds so good, man. Woo! So you see why I layered these together. So this synth right here, this Catalonia, it sounds good, but it doesn't have enough of that digital sound that I want to it, that which is why I layered it with this Onya. But then this synth doesn't have enough of that airy vibe to it, enough of the wide open. So I put the 2 together, but I turned this one down because it's so much of a harsher synth. It's so much of an in your face kind of like, I wanted the airy qualities to be highlighted a little bit more. And so I did turn, because if I turn it up, this is what it sounds like. You hear how it's just overpowering? It's way too much. And even if I turn both of these down, you're still losing that airy quality. I turned the Onya down and the Catalonia up. So you're getting both. And then, of course, we have our reverb and our chorus. So these I added to, once again, open up the sound, especially the chorus, to kind of, I like to spread my synths because I feel like that doesn't make it as harsh, especially with harsher synths like this. This is by itself. Now let's do it with the reverb and the chorus. A little bit spread. And that reverb on the end. So the reverb time I have set a little bit, about halfway. The size I turn it all the way up. The mix I turn down because I don't want it to be so, you don't want to hear the echo, the reverb going on like super loud. You want it to kind of be something that's still sitting in the background. And then the chorus effect, once again, I always turn my mixes down. You don't want to like blast these things up. And the amounts and the rates I have both at 50%. With the Catalonia, I just put a reverb on here. Let's see it without the reverb. It's still got its own little effect. But with the reverb, just adding a little bit of that extra taste to it. When you export your beat to throw into LANDR, because that's what we're going to have to do, you want to make sure that your master volume, okay, is not peaking. It's not going into the red. It's not going into the yellow. You want to have it to where it's turned down low. Otherwise, if you're just blasting the audio, it's not going to read enough dynamic range to be able to master that song correctly for you. It's just going to kind of have some trouble hearing the dynamic range. So go to the loudest part of the whole song, and we just clip. All right, so we don't have it in the red anymore, I don't think. Yeah. Okay, so, and we shall export the audio. Okay, so now that we have our export, we come here to LANDR, and we shall click on library. We click master, track, and then we'll select Wonder LANDR. That's our export. What LANDR does is it automatically takes the characteristics and the sound and the frequencies and all this stuff that it's scanning, basically the AI, and it will master your song based on how what you're inputting and what you want to be output. So we have these different styles. We have warm, balanced, and open. We have different intensity settings, which are going to be like low intensity, medium intensity, and high, which is like the most intense setting you can get. And then you have this new reference feature, which is something I'll probably touch on in a video of my own. But this is like if you want to master your song based on a different song that you like or the sound of or something like that. But we're just going to stick with the regular LANDR. And with this song, I want it to sound bright. So we're going to go with open, which is generally the brighter option. And we'll stick with medium. Let's go to balanced. Actually, I think we might go with balanced because it does have more bass and it's still a little bit open. Let's hear warm. This does favor the bass a little bit more, I think. Actually, you know what? We'll go with warm. High's too much and low's not enough. So I'll do a medium warm master here. And actually this makes sense because normally when I have a really bright song with a lot of bright instrumentation, I like to counteract that when I master them with a warm master from LANDR, because it makes it to where it's not so bright that it's kind of annoying to listen to, but it still gets you that sound. So we went with a warm master. You know, once you finish all your stuff, I mean, this is just the beat. I wouldn't master, me personally, if you're going to record vocals to this, I wouldn't master the beat and then record to it because you're going to have to master it all again. What I would do is I would export the beat, I would record my song to it, and then take the recorded song and put it into the master. But essentially what you end up with is something like this.
Everything isn't done. Committed murder in my heart, you're holding a loaded gun. A cold-blooded woman on the run. I'm the dream of my mirror. Think, wonder why I'm still here. Believe in making me wonder.
So that's it for this video, guys. That's it for my collaboration with LANDR. I thank you for watching all of these videos. I really appreciate it. You guys have been amazing. If you have any questions or comments, leave them down below. Thank you, LANDR, for this opportunity and asking me to come along for this. I really appreciate that. Guys, definitely go and sign up for LANDR. Sign up for samples on LANDR. You will not regret it. Distribution, mastering, auto matching, AI samples. They have everything that you need. So that's it. I don't know. I want to say there's going to be another video, but there's not. So as always, guys, stay legendary. Love you. Peace.